I'm Daniel Levine, and this is the Bio Report. The BET family of proteins regulates gene expression. Their overexpression has been implicated in both cancer and inflammatory diseases. Vyne Therapeutics is developing oral and topical BET inhibitors that treat inflammatory conditions ranging from rheumatoid arthritis to the skin condition vitiligo. We spoke to Vyne CEO Dave Domzalski and Vyne Chief Scientific Officer Iain Stuart about the role BET plays in autoimmune diseases, Vyne's platform technology, and its efforts to develop BET inhibitors that are both potent and specific. Dave, Iain, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Danny, for hosting us. We're excited to be able to spend some time with you this afternoon.
We're going to talk about immunoinflammatory conditions, Vyne, and its efforts to inhibit the BET family of proteins involved in inflammatory cell signaling pathways. Let's start with the problem. You're pursuing diseases like rheumatoid arthritis and psoriasis. These are big markets, but also ones that have multiple effective treatments, such as TNF inhibitors. What's the need you're seeking to address?
Yeah, thanks, Danny. So, at Vyne, we are a clinical stage biopharmaceutical company. We're developing medicines to improve the treatment of a broad range of autoimmune and inflammatory disorders. Specifically, we are focused on developing our novel proprietary BET inhibitor platform, which we refer to as our InhiBET platform. So a little bit of background on BETs. BET inhibitors have almost exclusively been developed by large pharma and large biotech for the treatment of certain cancers. We at Vyne are doing some of the first real formative work with BET inhibition in the I&I space. So our BET inhibitor platform consists of two drugs in clinical development. So the one is VYN201, which is in the clinic for the treatment of vitiligo. And the second is VYN202 or 202, which is a highly potent and selective BET inhibitor that we believe offers promise across a broad array of chronic inflammatory conditions, which there's significant unmet patient needs. So as you said, the initial disease targets for our oral BET inhibitor, which is VYN202, happen to be psoriasis and arthritis, and certainly recognize that these are large markets and that there are other products on the market to treat these conditions. So while there are currently treatment options approved for these diseases, there are still significant unmet medical needs in terms of therapeutic efficacy and safety profiles. Additionally, given VYN202's potential impact on multiple inflammatory pathways, our initial proof of concept studies in psoriasis and RA, we believe could serve as a gateway approach to a broad development strategy across a large range of immune-mediated diseases.
Well, what are the BET class of proteins? Can you explain their role in autoimmune and inflammatory diseases?
Sure. So BET proteins are epigenetic super enhancers of gene transcription that play a key role in driving the overproduction of many pro-inflammatory proteins that lead to autoimmune and inflammatory diseases. So there are two primary domains on the BET protein, BD1 and BD2. The BD2 domain is really the culprit when it comes to inflammation, as it plays an important role in inflammatory gene expression, whereas the BD1 domain is associated with steady state gene regulation and does not appear to play really any appreciable role in inflammatory signaling. So we believe that by selectively disrupting the BD2 portion of the BET protein, that we have the potential to disrupt aberrant inflammation activity while minimizing the impact on the other roles that BET proteins play. So preclinically, BD2 selective BET inhibitors have shown to improve tolerability and efficacy across a range of inflammatory and fibrotic disease models. controlled and local administration of BET inhibitors may also provide effective and tolerable solutions versus pan-BD BET inhibitors. So when we think about our drug design approach, our focus, since BD2 on the BET protein is really the culprit for inflammation, our drug design approach is to inhibit the BET protein function by targeting the BD2 portion of the BET protein. And so we do this through our oral delivery by being hyper selectively focused on the BD2 portion of the protein, whereas for VYN201, it's a topical pan-BD, it's a soft drug approach. The idea is get anything that gets into the tissues rapidly excreted through the liver. And so far, based on our results preclinically for both VYN201 and VYN202, but also what we've seen in the clinic for VYN201 specifically, we believe our drug design thesis so far is looking pretty good.
Does that suggest that these are going to be more targeted therapies, that they might avoid some of the systemic effects you see with other treatments for autoimmune conditions?
Yeah, Danny, I think, our drug design strategy has really been based around optimizing the benefit risk profile of BET inhibition. And really to apply it into the autoimmune area. As you know, the BET inhibitors historically have been primarily developed in the oncology space. The inhibit platform was specifically built to address those known toxicities and safety challenges. They've previously limited actually the development of these BET inhibitors and really have kept BET inhibitors in the oncology space. So when we take the example of VYN201, as David already said, this is a local administration and a soft drug approach. So the way I think about this is obviously applying it directly to tissues such as the skin and the joints and the lung. I mean, these are by definition natural barriers as well. We can somewhat limit systemic exposure, but the drug itself was specifically selected to have a very high first pass metabolism. We actually saw that in our early phase 1B study in vitiligo, and we'll come on to that in a second. Which is very encouraging. So we had de minimis exposure, and therefore any of those potential issues from the early generation of BET inhibitors would be certainly much less evident. The second candidate, as Dave talked about, is VYN202. Really, we don't have the approach as an oral medication to have this soft drug approach, obviously. So the way we're addressing the safety concerns of the early generation BET inhibitors is to target the BD2 binding domain. As BD2 itself, as I say, has been more implicated in reducing inflammatory gene expression, whereas the BD1 binding domain is more associated with general steady-state gene regulation, cell cycle processes, for example. So obviously, by selectively disrupting the BD2 binding domain, we have the potential to disrupt these aberrant inflammatory signaling processes while minimizing the impact on other genes that we know are important and have been implicated when you inhibit them with the early generation BET inhibitors in some of these more challenging safety issues. So VYN201 just now is enrolling in a phase 2B study for vitiligo. It's an autoimmune disease. Vitiligo itself is a progressive patchy loss of skin color. Phase 1B results from the phase 2 from VYN201 really showed some pretty promising early clinical improvement of vitiligo. We did see a nice dose response. We looked at 3 different doses and was generally well tolerated with a favorable safety profile, but no clinically relevant safety or emergent adverse events. For 202 has initially been developed, as I say, in treatment of immunoinflammatory diseases. Currently in phase 1A study, and been evaluating obviously safety, tolerability, pharmacokinetics, and pharmacodynamics in healthy volunteers. VYN202 is a potent anti-inflammatory activity across a diverse range of preclinical models and significant downregulation of key inflammatory cytokines that drive the diseases that we're interested in. So we're excited to progress both of these just now in the clinic.
I think many people may be familiar with vitiligo, but may be surprised to learn it's an autoimmune condition. How does it manifest itself and progress?
It's an autoimmune disease. Again, it manifests itself obviously clinically with this patchy loss of color on skin. And it really happens when the body's immune system essentially attacks and destroys melanocytes. Melanocytes are cells in our skin and eyes and hair that are responsible for our color and our pigmentation. Vitiligo can occur essentially any age, Danny. It can any skin type. Obviously, people who have the lighter skin It's less evident, obviously, than people who've got darker skin, but no less upsetting, obviously, particularly when they're seeing loss of pigment over time. Certainly, there's key triggers that can really worsen vitiligo. Stress is a big driver for vitiligo, other skin trauma, sunburns, etc. And really, without therapy, patients with active vitiligo will continue to see significant depigmentation in areas all over the body. Obviously, areas that are very visible, such as the hands and the face, is extremely upsetting, and that really manifests itself in patients with vitiligo with really poor body image, low self-esteem, really poor sense of self almost, really impaired quality of life, and can manifest itself in mental health issues.
And what treatment options exist for the condition today?
Yeah, currently there are about 3 million patients in the United States alone that have vitiligo. 2 million have been diagnosed, and historically, only about 10% have been actively seeking treatment. And that's primarily because most of the treatment options that have been out there have been challenging to patients. They've either had well-known side effects, such as steroids, calcineurin inhibitors, or the other options, such as, say, light therapy, can be quite burdensome to the patient, which would require multiple visits by the patient to the doctor's office on a weekly basis for months on at a time. And about 2 years ago, there was the first drug, and there is only currently one drug approved by the US FDA for the treatment of vitiligo. It's topical JAK inhibitor. And again, treatment is really dominated by non-specific therapies that I've mentioned already. So while these options can be useful and helpful for treatment vitiligo, they really don't necessarily achieve the adequate repigmentation that patients are looking for, and it often requires frequent and prolonged use. The studies themselves for vitiligo are usually a minimum of 6 months to a year plus. And so our hope, our aim is with our drug and developing our drug for vitiligo to hopefully have a product that will be well tolerated by patients, will provide convenient dosing for patients. Our drug is a once daily dose therapy that's currently in the clinic versus the only drug that's currently available is twice daily dose. And so our aim is we've got a drug that's, again, well tolerated, dosed conveniently, hopefully has a fast and rapid onset of action, and that can be used for this condition, which is chronic over the course of time.
And is the expectation that it would be used chronically, or would you use it to treat flares?
Sure, we believe our drug has potential. So first of all, it would be used chronically, and our hope is that it would have the potential to be a first line of treatment. When we think through the disease manifestation itself, about 80 to 85% of the patients that have vitiligo have what we refer to as localized disease. So less than 10% of their body surface area covered by these lesions that have been pigmented. So those candidates would clearly be, or those patients would clearly be candidates for localized treatment. Whereas the other, called 15 to 20% of patients that have vitiligo have more widespread disease and potentially would be candidates for systemic therapy. We believe, again, our product, if the work that we've done holds through advanced clinical programs and a regulatory pathway, we believe could have meaningful points of differentiation versus what's currently available. As I mentioned, the current product available is a twice daily dose drug, has labeling, black box warnings associated with the label. If our drug ultimately can get through the clinical regulatory pathway, has a clean safety profile, does not have warnings that the current therapy has, and is a once daily dose drug, we believe it has the potential to be a first line therapy for patients for the vast majority who have localized disease, but also could be used as an adjuvant therapy for those that have more widespread disease, especially for patients that are looking for treatment in the areas that are most noticeable, such as the face and hands.
And what's the development path forward?
Yeah, so back in June, Danny, we announced the first patient into our phase 2b study that evaluated Vyne 201 in either active or stable non-segmental vitiligo. The study is a randomized, double-blind vehicle control trial that evaluates the safety and efficacy of Vyne 201 gel It's in a topical formulation, is applied once daily. The primary efficacy endpoint of the trial is the proportion of subjects achieving improvement in facial vitiligo area scoring index of at least 50%, more commonly known as FVASI 50, and that's at week 24, and we'll compare that obviously to patients who were receiving vehicle. But we also have additional secondary endpoints of FVASI and also what's called TVASI or total VASI. Obviously, that's vitiligo on the face and on the body, both at weeks 24 and 52. Anticipated top-line results of the first part of the study, which is the week 24, is expected in mid-2025.
You're also developing Vyne 202, which you talked about a little. This is an oral BET inhibitor in development for both psoriasis and rheumatoid arthritis. How specific is Vyne 202?
Well, we haven't yet disclosed the specificity around Vyne 202's selectivity to BD2 versus BD1. That's for intellectual property purposes, but we would expect to do so in due course. What I can say is that we believe that Vyne 202 is the most potent and BD2 selective BET inhibitor in development.
Is the expectation that this would be most likely used by people who are on biologics today, or would this be targeting newly diagnosed patients?
Generally speaking, and depending on the disease, biologics can work really well for many patients, but there remains a need for certainly more efficacious and tolerable oral therapies. We believe Vyne 202 has the potential to be a more conveniently administered non-biologic treatment option for both immediate or acute control as well as chronic management of some of these immunoinflammatory indications that we've been speaking about, in which the damaging effects of unrestricted inflammatory signaling activity is common.
And what's the development path forward with that?
So Vyne 202 is currently being evaluated in a multiple ascending dose portion of a phase 1A study, obviously in healthy volunteers. And they were assessing the safety, tolerability, pharmacokinetics, and pharmacodynamics of Vyne 202 for up to 14 days of once daily treatment, obviously across different dose levels. We are expecting the results from that multiple ascending dose phase this quarter, Q2 2024.
You acquired both of these therapies from Vyne Therapeutics, which is now focusing on a new class of medicines. How did this transaction come about?
Yeah, sure. So at Vyne, we have a long track record and history of effective drug development. In fact, we're the first company to successfully develop topical tetracyclines, and we didn't do this just once, but we did it twice. And got those drugs approved earlier in the evolution of our company. But at Vyne, we were looking to evolve and move from development of drugs through the 505(b)(2) regulatory pathway, and really we're looking to leverage our development capabilities through new chemical entities. And so we have been looking for a platform, quite frankly, that we could leverage our capabilities and that could provide meaningful benefits to patients and providers and be differentiated from what's available on the market. And so a couple of years ago, we were able to form an alliance with our partner called Vyne Therapeutics. Vyne Therapeutics is a spin out of the University of Dundee over in Scotland, or a group of some super smart medicinal chemists. And they were developing their BET inhibitor platform, and it's in its early stage of development. They were looking for a partner that could demonstrate effective drug development. So as you may be able to tell, Iain is Scottish by heritage. He had a line in and had known the team over at the University of Dundee, and we were fortunate. We were smart and fortunate. We were able to form an alliance with Vyne Therapeutics, able to establish an exclusive license agreement with Vyne Therapeutics that allows us that we have exclusive access to the entire BET inhibitor platform, their entire library of BET molecules, and we have the ability to develop these molecules, these assets, for any indication, any jurisdiction around the globe. So it's really a credit to Iain and to our business development team back in our office that we were able to get access to the entire platform of BET inhibitors from Vyne and really do so before some of the bigger players in the space, large pharma and large biotech, were able to do so.
BET inhibitors are implicated in certain cancers. Are You planning on pursuing any cancer indications as you think about building out your pipeline?
Well, as we shared, we're currently very focused on developing and studying our BET inhibitor platform for these immunoinflammatory disorders that we've been speaking about, such as vitiligo, psoriasis, rheumatoid arthritis. And again, we believe if we're successful, that we'll have a lot of optionality in leveraging our platform across a wide array of inflammatory diseases. That said, as we continue to study VYN202's impact on multiple inflammatory pathways, we may unlock potential for a broader development strategy across a range of high need immune-mediated diseases, and certainly oncology is one of those. At the moment right now, it's not our focus, not where we're spending time, but we do believe that our drug design thesis would certainly be applicable for various cancers where we've seen BET inhibition being deployed for historically.
And how's the company financed to date, and how far will existing capital take you?
Sure, we're in a good place, which is comforting from our side. The company's debt free. We're well capitalized following the financing that we did through a syndicate of top leading healthcare investors last year. We've completely recapitalized the company. It was about a year ago today that we did this, and we've got capital and cash runway to get us through the end of next year with some cushion, and it allows us to complete the various clinical programs that are underway or we anticipate to be underway as we move through the rest of this year and into next year. So that includes completion of our phase 2b study in vitiligo for VYN201, which, as Iain mentioned, we anticipate having a top-line readout of the results for that study the middle of next year. We anticipate having the results for our single ascending dose and multiple ascending dose study for our oral BET inhibitor, VYN202, later this quarter. And then again, assuming we're successful with the SAD/MAD program, we would rapidly move into 2 proof of concept studies for our oral BET inhibitor, one in psoriasis and one in rheumatoid arthritis, that we would anticipate having the readout from those studies the back end of next year. And so the capital that we have on hand allows us to complete all these milestones over the course of the next year and a half plus.
And how are you thinking of raising additional capital beyond that?
Sure. Well, given the financing that I just mentioned, we're fortunate to be in a good place, and we've got the capital that allows us to get through multiple potential value inflecting catalysts for shareholders over the next, call it 12 to 18 months. It's a nice place to be in. We're certainly not forced to come to the markets over the near term to get through these value inflection points for the company, and can really focus on executing against our clinical plans. That said, of course, we're always mindful, and to take the programs further into development, at some point we would need to raise additional capital, and we'll consider when the appropriate time is to do that, in what form or fashion that we may do so in due course.
Dave Domzalski, CEO of Vyne Therapeutics, and Iain Stuart, Chief Scientific Officer of Vyne. Thank you both for your time today.
Thanks, Danny. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening. The Bio Report is a production of the Levine Media Group. To automatically download this podcast each week, subscribe to our RSS feed or through iTunes or other podcast manager. To join our mailing list, go to levinemediagroup.com. We'd love to hear from you. If you want to drop us a line or are interested in sponsoring this podcast, send email to danny@levinemediagroup.com. Special thanks to Jonah Levine, who composed our theme music, and the Jonah Levine Collective, which performs it.